It was supposed to be the happiest day for my brother, a grand wedding. Flowers everywhere, laughter in the air. But for me, it started off as anything but joyful. The moment I walked into the venue, all eyes turned, not out of love, but judgment. My brother's bride, dressed like a queen and beaming with pride, didn't waste a second before mocking me in front of everyone. Loud enough for the guests to hear, she sneered about my cheap dress and how someone broke like me shouldn't even be seen at a wedding like this. Her words stung, especially with so many people watching silently, pretending not to notice. I tried to stay quiet, to not ruin my brother's big day, but inside, I was crushed. What she didn't know was that I had one guest coming, someone very special. And when he arrived, everything changed in seconds. The music stopped. The whispers turned into gasps, and the bride's smug smile gone in an instant. Because standing at the door was someone no one ever expected, a billionaire whose presence alone flipped the entire wedding upside down. And what he said next left the whole room frozen. The room fell completely silent as he walked in, tall, confident, dressed in a sharp suit that probably cost more than the bride's entire wardrobe. Whispers rippled across the guests. Some recognized him immediately. Others just knew by his presence that he wasn't ordinary. What no one knew, not even my own brother, was that he wasn't just any rich man. He was my mentor. Someone who had believed in me when no one else did. Years ago, I helped him during a rough time, never asking for anything in return. Turns out, he never forgot. And now, he had come to return the favor. The bride's expression shifted from confusion to panic. She had no idea who he was, but she could feel her perfect image cracking. People began turning toward me, the one they had laughed at just minutes before. My heart was pounding, not because I wanted revenge, but because everything was happening so fast. I saw my parents looking stunned, my brother frozen near the altar, and guests pulling out their phones, sensing drama. The billionaire walked straight toward me, his voice calm but loud enough for the room to errand. Then he'd said something that made the bride's face go pale. He looked directly at the bride and said, "I came to support the only honest person." In this room, the silence deepened. You could hear a pin drop. The bride blinked rapidly, her confidence cracking like thin glass. My brother shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught between his bride and the unexpected scene unfolding in front of him. Guests whispered furiously among themselves, their curiosity growing with every passing second. Some glanced at me with surprise. Was I really connected to someone so powerful? The bride forced a smile and tried to regain control. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "This is a private, family moment." But the billionaire wasn't backing down. He turned to the crowd and calmly began speaking about loyalty, dignity, and how people often misjudge others based on appearance or money. He didn't mention names, but everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from finally being seen. Meanwhile, a brother's best man exchanged worried glances with another groomsman's. Something was off. I overheard them mumbling about a deal the bride's family had forced on my brother just weeks before the wedding, involving money, control, and conditions he hadn't agreed to. The wedding wasn't just about love, it was a transaction. The tension in the room was unbearable now. Faces that once held smiles were now tight with confusion and discomfort. My brother stood there, torn between his bride and everything unraveling in front of him. The billionaire's words had stirred something in the crowd, questions, doubts, and suspicions. The bride's parents tried to step in, their tone defensive, insisting that everything was being taken out of context. But their voices only made things worse. You could tell they were used to getting their way, used to money speaking louder than truth, The whispers grew louder. Some guests quietly left their seats, unsure if the wedding would even continue. The best man suddenly pulled my brother aside, speaking in a low but urgent tone. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught phrases like "you were tricked." This wasn't part of the deal, and they threatened your promotion. My brother's face turned pale. He looked over at the bride, and for the first time, there was real doubt in his eyes. The bride, sensing she was losing control, stepped forward and accused me of plotting all this, calling me manipulative, saying I had embarrassed the family on purpose. But before I could speak, the billionaire raised one hand and said something that made every jaw drop. The billionaire's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. If anyone here should be ashamed, it's not Hertz, the people who tried to buy this wedding like a business deal. A gasp rolled through the crowd, and then he added, "And just so we're clear, I was asked to invest in this wedding weeks ago by the bride's parents." Every eye turned to them. The bride's father stiffened, then stepped forward, trying to keep his cool. "He's twisting things. That was just a friendly offer," he claimed. But the billionaire wasn't done. He reached into his coat and pulled out printed emails, copies of the correspondence. In them, the bride's family had asked him to fund the wedding in exchange for getting him access to high-ranking contacts through the groom's government job. They even offered to arrange an official introduction to push a land development deal forward. That's when the room erupted. Guests stood from their chairs, murmuring loudly. My brother's hands clenched at his sides. The best man tried to calm him, but it was too late. His entire face was a mix of betrayal and rage. Just when it felt like the truth couldn't go any deeper, a woman stood up from the back row. She was older, elegant, and no one recognized her. She looked directly at the bride and said, "Tell them who you really are, or I will." All eyes shifted to the woman who had just stood up. Her voice was calm, but carried a sharp edge. "I'm Alina Whitmore," she said, pausing long enough for the name to sink in. A few people gasped. She was a retired federal investigator known for exposing high-level financial fraud. Then she looked straight at the bride. "You used my son too. Climbed the social ladder. You changed your name, erased your past, and pretended to come from money. But you forgot I still had the receipts." The bride's face drained of color. Her parents looked completely stunned, like they hadn't known this was coming either. Alina pulled out a small folder and handed it to my brother. Inside were legal documents, arrest records under a different name, and a long trail of fake businesses used to launder money. It turned out the bride had orchestrated more than just a flashy wedding. She had a history of scamming wealthy families through quick marriages and quiet settlements. The room broke into chaos. My brother stared at her, heartbroken, humiliated, and furious. He didn't say a word. He just handed the folder back and walked away from the altar. The ceremony was over. The bride tried to plead, to explain, but no one was listening anymore. When I thought everything was finally out in the open, Alina turned to me and smiled gently. "I've been watching you. You didn't just save my son today, you saved a lot of futures. That's why I'm offering you something no one else here can: full sponsorship for your business idea." I was speechless. I came to the wedding feeling like a failure. But I left knowing the truth had more power than any price tag. As guests quietly began to leave the venue, the mood had completely shifted. What was meant to be a glamorous wedding turned into a harsh lesson in truth, pride, and hidden intentions. My brother, though shaken, thanked me before walking out with a quiet strength I hadn't seen in him before. It would take time for him to heal, but at least he was free from a marriage built on lies. The bride and her parents left shortly after, their perfect image shattered and their secrets exposed for all to see. The billionaire gave me a nod of approval before heading out, his role in the day more than fulfilled. But it was Elena's offer that truly changed my life. She wasn't just helping me start a business, she gave me something even bigger: belief in myself. Word spread quickly after that day. People who once ignored me started treating me with respect, not because I suddenly had wealthy connections, but because I stood my ground when it mattered most. This story wasn't just about a wedding gone wrong. It was about how dignity, truth, and kindness are worth more than any label or luxury. And in the end, the one they called broke walked away the richest.